Now, when we say the no-win scenario, we're not talking about the Kobayashi Maru. No. This is my review for Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 4. So let's talk about it. So welcome back to the channel, everyone, and welcome to another review for the latest episode of Picard. Like I said, and this episode is titled No-Win Scenario. It's a bit of a mixed episode, this one. A mixed bag in that it shows the good and the bad of current Star Trek. It really does. Now, this episode continues on from the last episode. We find the Titan falling into the middle of this gravity well in the centre of this nebula after its attack by the Shriek. However, this leads to a bit of downtime essentially on board the ship. Yes, it gives Picard the opportunity to strike up a relationship with his son, learn a bit more about his son. It gives Seven the opportunity to skulk around the ship looking for this changeling on board. It gives Riker the chance to realise you know, the problems that he's had with Picard, the encounter that they had in the episode previous, the chance to work it out. It gives Beverly the opportunity to continuously count down throughout. Yes, so, you know, a lot goes on in this episode in the sense of character arc stuff. Thankfully, the Worf stuff is put aside. There is no cutting away from the main narrative of this episode. But like I said, this episode highlights the good and the bad. This is a very good episode. It's a very good episode. It's got some fantastic moments in it. It's got some fantastic action in it. It's got some fantastic slower paced sections. But however, we're given this scenario where the ship is out of power. It's falling into this middle of this gravity well, about to be destroyed, and we've got time to just take a step back and do this slower stuff. It all come to a head for me when they stepped into the holodeck. Power around the ship had been diverted away from all unnecessary systems, but they could still use the holodeck. Straight away, I clocked onto this. Fortunately, the writers did too, because they actually came to mention the fact that, well, actually, the holodeck runs on a different power source so that it can be used in a time of crisis for people to relax. Wow. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's extremely clever writing or just abysmal writing right there. I'm going to go with the latter of the two options there. You'd think that there would be a way of diverting the power from that system. I don't see in any scenario where you could say, actually, a holodeck is a good use of power within. Essentially, it's the same as me saying, hold on a minute, everywhere's dying of power, but let's have the cinema working. You know what I mean? It's not necessary. But anyway, so it gives these characters the opportunity to have a little bit of study about them. Now, the writing for Captain Shaw, I don't think they know what to do with this character whatsoever. Because as we saw a couple of episodes ago, he kind of had a little bit of a turnaround, a little bit of a sort of, you know, a redemption arc, a very small redemption arc. And now he's going to turn into a complete dick again in this episode. But by the end, he gets another little redemption arc. Again, this just edges towards writing being somewhat poor within it. Like I said, Beverly Crusher, she comes to realise that, you know, inside this gravity well, there's these energy bursts, and they're actually leading to a countdown. You know, the time between them is decreasing, and she realises that actually this is they're inside a womb, essentially. They're inside the amniotic fluid of a womb, and this gravity well is about to give birth to new life and all this sort of a thing. That's very Star Trek in itself, and, you know, harks back to the older era of Star Trek, and that stuff was great and fascinating, and obviously it was written on the board to start with. They were going to use these energy bursts to power the ship to get out of this scenario. It was, you know, predictability in writing. Now, the one bit that shocked me about this episode is that they allowed Patrick Stewart, they allowed the character of Picard to actually drop the F-bomb. I had to rewind, I had to shuttle search back to see whether I actually heard what I heard. And straight away I just thought, oh, Gene Roddenberry's doing like somersaults in his grave at the moment. Star Trek doesn't need this language. It doesn't need it. We can get by as a society without having to utilise such language in TV. And Star Trek's, you know, it's all been about, you know, always been about giving you this positive future and all this sort of a thing. I'd like to think that unnecessary words like that would be a thing of the past. It's just not very Star Trek. And for Patrick Stewart to even say, okay, yeah, I'll utter that word, I don't know, just something felt so wrong about it. We get a lovely scene between Seven and Shaw. They sort of work out their differences, and Seven goes ahead and saves Shaw from the onboard changeling and all this sort of stuff. So a lot goes on in this episode. It's a busy episode, but a slower episode. But on a whole, I think it's indicative of the poor writing of Star Trek that we've got at the moment. And I'm talking about the earlier seasons of Picard and Discovery, because Discovery's done this very same thing where you're in this very dangerous scenario, but you have the opportunity to slow the story down, to give you character beat moments, and I don't think one works with the other. I honestly don't. It feels very forced, a forced writing method that just doesn't sit right with me. You either focus on the one or you focus on the other. It kind of puts into play as a scenario whereby, yes, we're given 10 episodes of something. Or is this series 10 episodes or is it 8? I don't know. I've not actually looked into that side of it. But anyway, let's assume it's 10 episodes. So we've got a 10 episode block. We've got a story that really only fits maybe 6 episodes. But let's stretch it out. Let's stretch it out as much as we can. Now, this series here is the best series of Picard by far. Thusly, you know, well, I'll say thusly, there ain't no more. But it is the strongest season of Picard. I'll give it that. And that's because it's being carried on the weight of the OG crew of the Enterprise D. All these characters coming into play. We do see Deanna a tiny bit in this episode, which is nice. A very small part. Now, we knew that was going to be the case with her because she didn't really want to step away from the United Kingdom and go film in this series. She's quite happily settled where she is. Obviously, she was born and raised here, but, you know, she doesn't want to be over there filming this, so that's why her scenes are so small. But still, it's nice to see her on a computer screen and finding out a bit more about the relationship between her and Riker and the things that have happened in the past between them. So, you know, this was a good episode. I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. But however, on the other hand, it highlights issues with Star Trek as a whole at the moment. But don't take that as a negative. I know it's a negative, but there we go. But from me, positive episode. I enjoyed it. Very darkly lit because of the reduction in power on board the ship. It loves this dark aesthetic, doesn't it? I'd like a bit more light, I think. But anyway, so that's it. That's me done. My talk. Until next week, let me know down below in the comment section your thoughts on this episode of Star Trek Picard. And let's have a nice, friendly discussion, shall we? See you on the next one in a week's time. Take care all, and goodbye.